Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. And today is one of the last videos that we're getting to shoot here at Philadelphia Navy Yard, Drydock number 3, operated by North Atlantic Ship Repair. In today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the most asked about features of the Drydock, and that is the crane behind us here. People have been asking about this crane for months, and quite frankly, we haven't had answers about it. But we've finally gotten enough information from the folks at the shipyard who operate it that we can tell you a little bit about it. So we're going to have a brief 5-minute video about this crane. This particular crane was built in 1941. So Battleship New Jersey, coming into this dry dock in December of '42, would have been one of the very first ships that this crane was used on. The crane is diesel powered, so it can both drive itself around on 2 sets of railroad tracks. So it has the body, and it comes down to 2 sets of legs, and each one of those legs sits on 2 rails. Once upon a time, those rails connected this dry dock with the other dry docks in the yard. Although it seems like, since the yard has been redeveloped, much of the original rail system has been paved over. So now, the rails just go around this dry dock. So it goes all the way from the riverside on this side of the ship, all the way around the back to the riverside on the other side of the ship. So you can move the crane wherever it's needed around this dry dock. It's one of several nearly identical cranes that are in the yard, and other dry docks here still have sister cranes to this one. The crane has 2 cabin type areas inside of it. The upper area, you can see behind me, that's the big broad glass face, is where the crane operator sits. He's got a pretty good view up there, but not a whole heck of a lot of room to stretch his legs. The lower area is the size of 1 to 2 living rooms, depending on how big your house is. But there isn't a whole heck of a lot of room on the inside because each of the various hooks has its own winch, and there's separate motors, electrical systems. It's all filled with the equipment. Much like the ships that it maintains, every part of space inside is valuable and occupied by equipment. So this crane has 3 separate hooks. The tallest one, out on that yellow lattice bit, can lift about 5 tons. That's great if you have a section of mast or antenna that has to be lifted really high up or really far out from the crane. Not all of the sister cranes in this yard have that feature on it. This one might be the only one here in Philadelphia, or at least the only one left, that still has that extra boom extension. You'll notice that that one doesn't really have a whole block and tackle system supporting it. It's more like a single cable comes down. So there's very little mechanical advantage. You don't want to put too much weight out on the end of that. It just can't support it. The middle block can lift about 17 tons. And that has more like 2 cables going through it through a block. So that's got some mechanical advantage. That's not quite so far out from the base. So that's good for lifting things farther or higher than the main hook, the one that we've primarily used during this project, which can lift up to 60 tons and has something like 4 different cables coming down to the block and tackle. So it's both closer to the base, it is a larger apparatus, and it's got more mechanical advantage. This crane, of course, pales in comparison to the big hammerhead crane that used to be on Pier 4 where Kennedy is sitting. That one nominally had a load rating of 350 tons. However, it could be overloaded about 50%. When New Jersey's turrets were being installed, that crane was lifting them in about 550-ton sections to lower them on. Now, fortunately, for this yard period, we haven't had to overload this crane at all. The largest things it's probably lifted are the man lifts that we put down in the dry dock that the painters have been using to get to all the different parts of the hull. And of course, the 18 tons of paint we had to lower down there. People have been asking about the age and how long that crane's been here for a while. We're pretty sure it's the same crane, or at least one of its sister cranes, that shows up in images of the ship from 1967-68 when she was here. But because of the relatively recent paint job and the sheet metal exterior, it was kind of hard to determine the age. It wasn't until we talked to the yard workers and got it invited into the inside of it. Yeah, when it comes to things like this, we're pretty much vampires. We have to be invited in. But once we got in and got to see the inside, it was very obvious that it was a 30s and 40s era design and construction. Everything from the light fixtures to the motors, the electrical equipment, it all is that Great Depression era, World War II era types of fittings. And it's amazing that much like the yard is still working 103 years on, and the ship is still working 81 years on, that this crane is still able to work 83 years on. So now that the yard period's just about over, in fact, by the time you watch this, it may be fully over, we might have already been towed. What was your favorite thing you got to see while you were in the yard? Let us know in the comments section down below. I'll tell my successor to point it out in 30 years when we're back. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum and our ongoing restoration efforts. Just because the yard period's over doesn't mean we're done maintaining the ship. Next up, we're painting the freeboard and finishing the teak deck. You can also support us by liking, sharing, subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.